You are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
IELTS speaking vocabulary. Hello there. In this tutorial, we're going to look at the topic of social media. We're going to look at a list of vocabulary terms, and then we look at some model answers, and of course we're going to go through each part with some sample questions for speaking part 1. Speaking part 2, we'll have a look at a sample cue card and then a model answer, and then obviously as well we'll get to speaking part 3, the more difficult questions. And throughout the whole tutorial, I'll be highlighting some of the vocabulary that will help you score high. Now, this is all topic-specific vocabulary that you'll definitely need to use if you're going to get a band 7 or higher. Now, obviously, it's not a case of just using this vocabulary. You can't walk into the exam and go vlogger, blogger, meme, DM, emoji. We all know that's not the case. There are other criteria such as your pronunciation, your task response, your fluency, your accuracy. But today we're going to mainly focus on the vocabulary part. Now, just before we get started, social media is a popular topic. And I think it's so a popular topic because it's pretty much everywhere nowadays. And the examiners, obviously, they are influenced by everyday events. So if they are constantly reading and hearing in the news about stories about social media, then it's going to get into their head and they'll start using it in the questions. Just like environmentalism, climate change is a very common topic as well in both the writing and the speaking, actually. Now, also the good thing with social media is that it's not a good thing, but I think it's quite amusing, some of the stories that happen, because it's quite a fast-moving topic, a fast-moving area, and so you always get these like funny stories. I remember one story about a guy who he was in a messenger group and he changed people's names and gave them all nicknames. And I think it was like a company group, with like all your work colleagues. And he changed all their names, and he thought that it was anonymous and that only he could see them. And he changed one of them to something like McBulgepants or something like that. And anyway, after a few days, the colleague contacted him and said, "Hey, could you mind changing back my name to my normal name, please?" And the guy who changed the names obviously thought that it was all anonymous, and it wasn't, and it was quite embarrassing for him, especially with it being his work colleagues. So this is, personally I find it quite interesting, and we're all, not all of us actually, but I was going to say we're all getting to grips with it, but probably not nowadays. Just one last thing. I think there's two interesting groups of the 3 groups of people. There's like the digital natives that grew up with this and are much more adept. Then there's sort of like the maybe the millennials or Gen X. I'm not entirely sure, but these are the ones who sort of like got the crossover. So when it came, when Facebook and all of this and Instagram were introduced, they jumped straight into it. I wouldn't say they're natives, but the natives would be the ones who've had it all their life. They grew up and it was never new. Like my cousins, for example, who are about 15, 16. For them, YouTube has been around forever. And then there's the middle group who saw it introduced. And then there's the older group, probably like our parents, that kind of saw it introduced and then hesitantly got involved. In fact, I just heard another funny story about my girlfriend's stepdad, who was in Facebook groups asking people how to build a house. And she said it was like a face palm moment, she's like, oh no, this is not what Facebook groups are used for. But anyway, I think there's lots. This is why it's quite an interesting topic for myself. So let's jump into it. I'll go through the vocabulary, and this way it'll make it easier for you to identify it once you hear it. So we've got vloggers and influencers, followers. We all know. I'll just basically very quickly go through it. So vloggers, it's a word I hate personally, but vloggers are people who blog, but with videos online, somewhere like YouTube or maybe even TikTok. I don't think they'd be called vloggers, but usually it's for YouTubers. Then we've got this lovely species of people called influencers that get a really bad name online, I think. But we've got influencers. I think the Kardashians would come to mind. And personally, I find it irritating that I know all about the Kardashians, but I never wanted to. Never ever researched them, but I know everything about them. It's just pushed in my face. Anyway, then we've got followers, people who follow those influencers or the YouTube channels, and then DMing is like direct messaging, memes. I love some good memes. Recently, with all the royal family scandal, there has been a quality. The level of quality of the output of the memes has been fantastic. I sent one to my friend, and he replied. He was just like, I snorted out my coffee. He was drinking some coffee in the morning. He saw it. And he just burst out laughing. So memes, very important part of today's society. And then we've got viral videos. We've got scammers. I've got a friend actually in Spain who, via Twitter, he sent all his Ethereum, the cryptocurrency, to Elon Musk because he thought Elon Musk was messaging him and needed some help with some Ethereum wallet, something like that. And he sent all his cryptocurrency to Elon Musk, and then straight away afterwards, I think he realized it was a scam. Anyway, that's a scam, if ever there was one. Trolls, these are the nasty side. Trolls, people who just try and get a reaction out of people, and then haters who, again, are just posting negativity online. So let's have a look. Question 1. Is social media popular in your country? Very much. This is typical answer from a person called Philippe. Very much. Many people, especially the young, are trying to become vloggers and influencers. They try to accumulate as many followers as possible. Apparently, there are people in my country earning a considerable income from this. Great answer. We don't have to go into the more complex or high-scoring answers here. Remember, this is part 1. The goal is just to get you relaxed, get you feeling comfortable so that you can show your ability in the most natural way possible. Next, do you use social media often? As model answer, I must confess that I am an avid user of social media. I am constantly DMing my friends the newest memes and the latest viral videos. It's a way to connect with them, even when we can't be together. Good. Next one. Why do some people choose not to use social media? Well, the internet is still in many ways like the Wild West, with very little legislation or controls. It is extremely easy to fall prey to scammers trying to trick you out of your money, or even worse, your identity. Social media sites are full of trolls who only post in order to incite a reaction. So, just a side note here. Now, you may think that, okay, social media, easy topic. I'm using social media every day, and I can easily answer any of those questions I just heard. However, it's still a good exercise just to write out your answers to these types of questions, because you might find that you'll stumble across a topic that you feel passionately about, or you might want to say, okay, I'd love to tell a story about that. And you think, and writing it out will help you just structure it and help you discover the vocabulary that you will need to explain that story. And it's much better just taking that preparation time and just fleshing it all out on paper before the exam, rather than stumbling through the story, searching for the vocabulary on exam day. So just some questions that you could write out for yourself, some answers. So what you could write out, how ironical, I'm stumbling through my own speaking podcast. So what I want to say is you could write out your answers to these questions. Is social media popular in your country? Do you use social media often? And why do some people choose not to use social media? Just straightforward questions, couple of sentences, and you're good. IELTS speaking part 2. Let's have a look. Let's work through a sample cue card. Talk about your favorite social media site or application. Say when you first used it, why you use it, how often you use it, and if you recommend it to others. Now, in the Speaking Confidence course we have a structure for you to follow. And it's basically where a very, very brief overview would be, we're brainstorming for ideas, then we number those ideas and we make sure that we're answering every single part of the cue card. Now that's kind of like your preparation stage. Now, after you've done that, you want to look for opportunities, or even better, while you're brainstorming, look for opportunities where you can use your language skills, such as comparisons, superlatives, examples, and all these other features that we would do well to include in our answer. Now, I've got a model answer in front of me talking about Snapchat and TikTok. And personally, I don't use these. My girlfriend, she likes TikTok, but she's hesitant about fully diving into it because it's another time sink. So, we're just going to another channel for us to waste our energy. I'll give you my personal answer here. I'm going to talk about Reddit. Okay, so my favorite social media site is Reddit. I use it because I'm not a digital native, so to speak, and I still like having anonymity. Oh my word. It keeps going. I like having the privacy with Reddit because it's not connected really to my social media, and I'm very much what's called a lurker, where I don't post much, I just consume a fair amount, and very seldomly I might upvote it. But anyway, I use it because I just find I can set it to the feeds or the channels that I find interesting. So I'm subscribed to such channels such as Futurology, Heavy Seas, Thorgasm, just these weird ones where Thorgasm, for example, is just video clips of lightning strikes, and then Heavy Seas is just boats going through these heavy waters. So I can get a really personalized feed of just stuff that I find casually interesting. So that's why I use it. I would say I start my day with it. I'm not proud, but each morning while I have my morning cup of tea, I'll just start browsing through it and see some interesting posts about future technology or about lightning strikes and all of these other topics, as well as football and cricket and some of the other events, some of the other topics I follow. And sometimes I do recommend it to others. It is a little bit geeky, so I approach it with caution about who I recommend it to. But my geeky and nerdy friends, we are all on Reddit, and we all agree it's a time sink, and from time to time we'll delete the app just to basically perform a digital detox. So maybe for a few days just delete it and get back to normality, get back to the real world. And that's my talk about my favorite social media site. Okay, so there we go. It's quite straightforward. Stumbled through some words like anonymity, switched it to privacy. We've got followers, threads, subtopics, lots of different vocabulary in there. I worked through the bullet points. I didn't really include some of the higher level features like superlatives or the comparisons, but I did include plenty of examples and anecdotes, which are quite helpful as well. Because anecdotes they force you to kind of go into more detail and use more vocabulary, and often they give you the opportunity to use different tenses as well. So some other vocabulary we can use there, again, influencers. Maybe if we did do the model talk about TikTok and Instagram, we could talk about influencers, DMs, filters, blocking and catfishing, and all the other lovely aspects of those channels, of those apps. IELTS Speaking Part 3. Now this is an ideal opportunity for anecdotes and your comparisons. So I'll try and use a few of these in the next answers. So at what age are children generally allowed to use social media in your country? Model answer. I think it really depends on which application the child is using. Some applications generally expose a child more to potential predators or cyberbullies, so I think children should be at least 15 to use them. I have heard that predators create fake profiles in order to groom children. This is despicable and is one reason why parents should monitor their children's device. Okay, next answer. So just the vocabulary there, we've got cyberbully, grooming, fake profiles, and then monitor. All of this is useful vocabulary. Next question. Do you think people will use social media more or less in the future? Now, hopefully, you probably spotted that this question gives you an option. Now, if you've got an option, it's an ideal and appropriate opportunity to use a comparison. So let's have a look at this model answer. With so many things changing so quickly, it's rather difficult to predict what the future holds. A few years ago, we were sending emojis to one another. Now everywhere you look, people are dancing in front of their cameras for the world to see. So I imagine our obsession with social media will continue, although I hesitate to predict what form that will take. So we've got a conjunction there with although, which is very useful. Also, especially useful for these when we've got an alternative in the question. Do you have a mild comparison? You said it's rather difficult to predict. There's an implied comparison there. That's not a bad answer at all. Why do you think bullying on the internet has become so widespread? Again, cyberbullying is one of these topics that's in the media quite a lot nowadays, and it's definitely worth reading up about it. It's quite an interesting topic. So again, it's one of these ones that you could definitely see in your writing task and in your speaking exam. So just writing a few paragraphs about this, do some research, do some summaries of some articles, get that vocabulary, get your ideas fleshed out on paper, organize your thoughts, and you'll find that these kinds of questions, this topic, will become immensely much easier. Let's see. Why do you think bullying on the internet has become so widespread? I think cyberbullies and trolls generally feel that a shield of anonymity protects them. Many people are on social media, are out there with dummy profiles harassing people at will. And I guess, like in all kinds of bullying, it makes the bully feel important or worthy. So the bully gets the validation he or she needs without any of the repercussions that might occur if the bullying were to take place in the real world. So again, we've got some of that vocabulary we mentioned before, the cyberbullies, the trolls, anonymity, and also we've got some extra vocabulary such as harassing and validation, all higher level vocabulary terms that the examiner would expect to hear. So let's just go through a list before we finish up. We've got meme, anonymity, troll, viral, emoji, derogatory, censor, harass, catfishing, influencer, Photoshop, filters, block, scam. Quite a lot there. I didn't need to go into the definitions. I'm pretty certain we are all fairly aware with them. Maybe catfishing. That's where you create a false internet profile in order to deceive or scam someone. So I think my friend, which I mentioned earlier, who sent a few €100 of Ethereum cryptocurrency to Elon Musk, got catfished because the person asking for them was only pretending to be Elon Musk. So that's it from me today. If you need more help with your speaking, then have a look at the Speaking Confidence course. Also, we've got the Speaking Feedback service where it costs about $9, and you can send in your model answer and we will give you feedback to help you improve, just like we do with the writing exam, just like we do with the writing correction. By the way, we've got the $5 essay correction back. If you go to the website, you'll see at the top of the page, we've got the offer back. It's only temporary, so you might want to look into that. Especially, it's just a quick way, easy, inexpensive way to improve. Normally, these corrections are around $19, so it's a massive discount, and we're doing it because we just find it's incredibly popular with the students. They can get some feedback. You can identify where you're losing points, and also it's a great way to see if we're a good fit to work with each other. If you like our style of essay corrections, then we invite you to get more. You can carry on improving, and it's just a very inexpensive way to get started. And just one last thing, you can only buy one of these. It's only a trial because really, it's too, obviously it's just too cheap to price them all the time like that. We wouldn't survive, we'd be out of business. So just we only offer you one, and like we said, it's just a sample, a try before you really invest in your course and in yourself. So have a look at that. Go to IELTS Podcast, and while you're there, you can sign up for our newsletter and get lots of other IELTS material for free. So have a great day, keep working, keep on improving, and you will get there. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your IELTS exam.
Thanks for listening to IELTSpodcast.com.